Hello, this is Rabbi Dr. Juan Marcos Brajona Gutierrez, and today we're continuing our study on the prohibition against necromancy. We had finished a review of Sheol in a number of videos that we looked at, and we began the discussion on necromancy or necromancia a couple of videos ago. Today we're looking at probably the most striking passage in the Tanakh as it relates to the afterlife. This is my opinion. And it also, of course, entails a necromancy. We're talking about 1 Samuel 28, 13 through 19, where Saul, having been forsaken by Hashem, goes to a sorceress, to a medium, to inquire of the dead. And so we can see many connections of this already, because we talked about how the word Sheol may be derived from the idea of sha'alu, of asking. Its Akkadian roots and some of the Canaanite connections to that. And the very fact that Samuel is being brought up, when we look at the Hebrew, it's clear that the indication is that he's coming up. And what is he coming up from? Well, it's coming up from Sheol, from the ground. And so those are interesting points of view that I think are immediate. So we look here, and I'm having to squint a little bit because the screen is a little bit small, and I'm having some technical difficulties, but it says, Vayomer la hamelech el tir'i ki ma ra'it, vatomer ha'isha el Shaul Elohim ra'iti olim min ha'aretz. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, for what seest thou? And the woman said unto Saul. And what did she see? It says, Ki ma'i ra'it. It says, Vatomer ha'isha el Shaul Elohim ra'iti el olim. I see a god, or some kind of a divine being, or some entity coming out. Olim is arising, like you think about Olim going to the land of Israel. Min ha'aretz. So he's coming up out of the ground. He's arising. It says, Vayomer la ma ta'aro. ותאמר איש זקן עולו וכו עוטה מעיל וידע שאול כי שמואל הוא ויפקוד אפיים ארצה וישתחו. And he said unto her, What form is he of? And she said, an old man cometh up. He says, ותאמר איש זקן עולה. Again, ole, he's coming up, and he is covered with a robe, the me'il. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel. He bowed with his face to the ground and prostrated himself. And then he says, Vayomer Shmuel el Shaul, Lama chir gaztani lecha'alot oti. Vayomer Shaul sar li me'od ufilishtim nilchamim bi. Elohim sar ma'alai velo anani od gam beyad chanevi'im gam bechalomot vekra'e, Lecha lechoda'ani ma e'eseh. And Samuel said to Saul, Why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answereth me no more. Neither by prophets nor by dreams, therefore I shall call thee, that thou makest me known unto me what I shall do. And of course, just as a side reference, and I think I just saw one of my sons in the background, so I apologize for that. The tragedy here, of course, is the predicament of Saul, that he has been abandoned by Hashem because of his actions. And as a consequence, he is forced to go to the very practitioners that he had warred against to make this forbidden within Israel in accordance with the Torah. Now, just as a side note, I think it's amazing because Saul, after hearing the judgment that Shmuel relates, he doesn't avoid his destiny. I think that's something, I believe it's like a redeeming factor to Saul. He dies in battle in defense of the people of Israel with his sons. I think another individual might have tried to escape that, run from the battle, do everything in their power to avoid that. But instead, he fulfills his obligation as a king. And in essence, as a consequence of these actions, this low point in his life, he decides to confront that as his punishment, but also as perhaps, B'ezrat Hashem, as his redeeming element. So this, I think, is a fascinating passage, as I said. In the next video, we'll comment a little bit about some of the issues that troubled maybe some of the commentators, in the sense that they felt this problematic. Did mediums, did sorceresses, witches have the ability in reality to call up the dead? Was it, as many, rabbis would say, particularly the Rambam, is it simply a question of trickery? Is it something that is, a variety of different explanations for this that are rational, that a ventriloquist, someone who can, slip of hand type thing? Or was it someone who was genuine? And if so, why were they able to stir Samuel from his rest? So there are many interesting issues about that. I think in some sense we can leave that to the future because we really want to focus in on the biblical texts as they stand, and then we can look at commentaries in the future. But again, this is one key passage that is in many ways reflective of the descriptions of Sheol that we've looked at in the past. And so we'll see you in the next video.